Listen closely, my friends, to a story that happened long ago in a village where the forest meets the sky. This is a tale about a man named Kalunga, the greatest hunter who ever lived. But this story will teach us that even the strongest person must respect what they cannot see. If you're watching this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my folktale story from. I want to know how far it has traveled. In a village surrounded by thick green forest lived a man named Kalunga. He was the best hunter anyone had ever seen. When other hunters came back empty-handed, Kalunga always returned with meat for his family. Kalunga could follow the smallest footprint in the dirt. He could see where a rabbit had hopped hours before. His arrows never missed their target. When he pulled back his bowstring and aimed, the animal was already caught. Children in the village loved to watch him walk. They tried to copy his long, quiet steps. They pretended to carry bows on their backs just like him. When Kalunga passed by, mothers would point and say, "There goes the great hunter." People whispered about his amazing skills. They told stories about how he could track a deer for 3 days without getting tired. They said he could shoot an arrow through the eye of a needle. All this praise made Kalunga feel very proud. He began to think he was the greatest man who had ever lived. He started to believe that nothing in the whole world was stronger or smarter than him. One evening, Kalunga returned from hunting with a large antelope across his shoulders. The meat would feed many families. He walked slowly through the village so everyone could see his prize. "Look at me!" Kalunga shouted loudly. "No animal can escape my arrows. No beast is fast enough to run from me. Even the spirits would be afraid if they saw me coming." Some young men cheered and clapped their hands. They were impressed by his strength and his words. The children laughed and started repeating what he said. Even the spirits would be afraid, they shouted, running around the village. But the older people in the village did not smile. The grandmothers shook their heads. The grandfathers frowned and looked worried. They knew that some words should never be spoken out loud. The village chief watched Kalunga from his doorway. He saw how proud the hunter had become. The chief remembered other men who had spoken such dangerous words. None of their stories had ended well. That night, as families shared Kalunga's meat, they also shared whispers. Some admired his courage. Others feared what might happen next. The next morning, all the oldest people in the village came to find Kalunga. They sat in a circle around the fire pit in the center of the village. Their faces were serious. "Kalunga," said the oldest woman, her voice gentle but firm. "We need to talk to you about your words yesterday." The oldest man nodded. "You are a great hunter, this is true. The Creator gave you this gift. But you must remember something important. A hunter may kill animals for food, but spirits are not meant to be hunted. The world you cannot see is not yours to conquer," said another elder. "There are powers in this world that are much older and stronger than any man." The elders spoke with love in their hearts. They wanted to protect Kalunga from danger. They had seen what happened to proud men before. But Kalunga only laughed. He stood up and waved his bow in the air. "You are old and you worry too much," he said loudly. "I am not afraid of spirits or anything else." He walked away from the elders, making jokes about their warnings. Some young people laughed with him. The elders watched him go, sadness in their old eyes. Market day came to the village. People from other villages brought vegetables, cloth, and pottery to trade. The market was full of voices, laughter, and the smell of cooking food. Everyone was talking about Kalunga's bold words. The story had spread like fire through dry grass. Some people admired his courage. "What a brave hunter," they said. "He fears nothing." But others shook their heads in worry. The older women pulled their children close when they heard the story. "Never say such things," they warned their little ones. "The spirits hear everything we say." A very old woman sat selling herbs and roots. When she heard people talking about Kalunga, she muttered under her breath. "Foolish young man. The spirits hear everything. They are always listening. Kalunga walked through the market that day, buying what he needed. He heard people whispering about him. He heard his name being spoken. All the attention made him feel even more important. When someone asked him if the stories were true, he smiled big. "Let the spirits come if they want," he said. "I am ready for them." The old herb woman heard his words. She closed her eyes and shook her head. "Poor boy," she whispered. "You have no idea what you are asking for." A group of village children found Kalunga sharpening his arrows under a big tree. They ran up to him, their eyes bright with excitement. "Kalunga," called the boldest boy. "We heard what you said about the spirits. You really aren't afraid of them?" The children gathered around him in a circle. They looked at him like he was the bravest person in the world. "If you can scare even spirits," said a little girl, "then you must be stronger than everyone." The children began to dare him. "Prove it," they said. "Show us how brave you are. Make the spirits come and see your power." Kalunga felt his chest swell with pride. These children saw him as a hero. He wanted to keep that feeling forever. "I will prove it," he declared, standing up tall. "Soon I will show you all. I will make the spirits themselves bow down before me." The children cheered and danced around him. They clapped their hands and sang songs about the brave hunter. Their joy fed Kalunga's pride like wood feeds a fire. That night, the children ran home to tell their parents what Kalunga had promised. The parents felt fear creep into their hearts. They knew their children had helped push Kalunga towards something very dangerous. That night, Kalunga lay in his small hut, his bow beside him on the sleeping mat. The village was quiet, and everyone was asleep. But strange sounds began to drift in from the forest. First, he heard drums beating a rhythm he had never heard before. The sound was not like the drums from his village. These drums seemed to call his name with each beat. Then he heard laughter and singing. The voices sounded exactly like his friends from the village. They seemed to be having a wonderful celebration somewhere in the forest. Kalunga sat up, listening carefully. "Why would my friends feast without inviting me?" he thought. "I am the greatest hunter. They should want me at their party." The sounds grew louder and more joyful. He could hear people dancing and clapping. The music was beautiful and wild. It made his heart beat faster with curiosity. "They must be celebrating something special," Kalunga said to himself. "Maybe they caught a big animal and want to surprise me. I should go find them." He picked up his bow and arrows. The sound seemed to be calling him deeper into the forest. Pride and curiosity burned in his chest like fire. He decided he would find this celebration and join his friends. Kalunga stepped out of his hut into the cool night air. The village was dark and silent. Only the distant sounds from the forest called to him. He walked toward the edge of the village where the forest began. The trees looked different in the moonlight. They seemed bigger and darker than during the day. As soon as Kalunga entered the forest, strange things began to happen. The leaves on the trees rustled and whispered, even though there was no wind. The shadows between the trees seemed to move and dance. An owl hooted loudly above his head, as if trying to warn him. Another owl answered from far away. Then another. Soon the forest was full of owl calls that sounded like voices saying, "Go back. Go back." But Kalunga was too proud to listen to warnings from birds. He pushed deeper into the forest, following the sound of drums and laughter. His bow was ready in his hands. The path under his feet felt strange. Sometimes it seemed to glow softly in the darkness. Sometimes it felt like he was walking on clouds instead of solid ground. With each step, Kalunga moved farther away from his village and deeper into mystery. But his pride would not let him turn around. After walking for what felt like hours, Kalunga came to the river that ran near his village. But something was terribly wrong. The river was flowing backward. Instead of running downhill toward the distant sea, the water was climbing uphill, flowing toward the mountains. Kalunga rubbed his eyes, thinking he must be seeing things wrong. Fish were leaping out of the backward flowing water, but they were jumping in the wrong direction too. They splashed and danced in ways that fish should never move. Kalunga knelt by the water's edge and put his hand in the river. The water felt warm instead of cool. It seemed to glow with a soft, strange light. This must be a dream, he said to himself. Rivers do not flow uphill. Fish do not dance in the air. But even as he said these words, he knew this was not a dream. Everything felt too real. The warm water on his hand, the sound of the strange splashing, the drumbeats still calling from deeper in the forest. The backward river scared him a little, but his pride was still stronger than his fear. The music and laughter called to him from across the water. Kalunga found a fallen log and used it to cross the impossible river. On the other side, the forest seemed even more magical and strange. On the other side of the backward river, Kalunga looked up at the sky and gasped. The moon, which should have been silver-white, was glowing deep red like fire. Under the red moon's light, the trees around him began to bend. They swayed toward him as if they were bowing. Their branches whispered his name over and over, Kalunga. 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 At first, this made him feel proud. Even the forest knows who I am, he thought. Even the trees bow down to the great hunter. But as the whispering continued, something inside his chest began to feel tight with worry. His heart beat faster, but now it was not just from excitement. A small seed of fear had begun to grow in his mind. The red moon made everything look different. Rocks looked like crouching animals. Tree stumps looked like people sitting and watching him. Shadows moved when nothing was there to cast them. Still, the sound of celebration called to him from deeper in the forest. The drums beat stronger now. The laughter was louder and more joyful. It sounded like the most wonderful party in the world. Kalunga's curiosity was still stronger than his growing fear. He wanted to find the source of all this music and joy. He continued walking toward the sounds, his bow ready in his hands. As Kalunga walked deeper into the strange forest, a small hare hopped into his path. But this was no ordinary hare. When it opened its mouth, human words came out. "Hunter," said the hare in a voice like an old man's. "Go home now, before it is too late. Turn around and run back to your village." Kalunga laughed at the tiny animal. "I do not take orders from rabbits," he said. "You are just a small creature. I am the greatest hunter in the land." He pulled an arrow from his quiver and aimed his bow at the talking hare. "Maybe I will take you home for dinner," he said. But when Kalunga released his arrow, the most amazing thing happened. The arrow turned into a butterfly in midair. The butterfly fluttered around his head for a moment, then flew away into the red moonlight. Kalunga stared in shock. His arrows had never failed before. They had never turned into butterflies before. When he looked back down at the path, the hare had vanished. There was no sign that it had ever been there. Not even tiny footprints in the dirt. This strange magic should have scared Kalunga. It should have made him turn around and run home. But his pride would not let him believe he was in danger. Following the sound of drums and laughter, Kalunga came to a clearing in the forest. What he saw there took his breath away. The clearing glowed with soft, beautiful light that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. In the center, tall figures danced in circles, clapping their hands and singing. These figures looked like people, but they were made of shimmering light. They were taller than any humans Kalunga had ever seen, and their bodies seemed to glow from the inside. These were the spirits of the forest. When the spirits saw Kalunga, they stopped dancing and turned to him. Their faces were beautiful and kind, with warm smiles. "Hunter," they called out together, their voices like music. "Welcome to our celebration. We have been waiting for you." The spirits beckoned for him to come closer. "Join us," they sang. "Dance with us. Sing with us. We have been having such a wonderful time." Kalunga felt drawn to their joy and beauty. They seemed so friendly and happy. Part of him forgot about the warnings from the elders, the backward river, and the talking hare. You know who I am? He asked, stepping into the glowing clearing. Of course, the spirits laughed. You are the great hunter who fears nothing. Come, be our guest. The dancing spirits gathered around Kalunga in a friendly circle. Their light made everything in the clearing glow like daytime, even though the red moon still hung in the dark sky above. We have heard about your skill with the bow, said the tallest spirit, whose light was brighter than the others. We would love to hear you make music. Music? Kalunga asked, confused. Play your bow like a harp, suggested another spirit with excitement. Pull the string and make it sing for us. Kalunga had never thought of using his bow to make music before. But the spirits looked so eager and friendly. He wanted to impress them just like he impressed the people in his village. He held up his bow and plucked the bowstring with his finger. The string made a clear, musical note that rang through the clearing. The moment they heard the sound, all the spirits began to dance wildly. They spun and leaped and laughed with pure joy. The trees around the clearing swayed to the rhythm. Even the ground seemed to pulse with the beat. More, cried the spirits. Play more music for us. Kalunga felt proud that even these magical beings enjoyed his music. He plucked the string again and again, creating a simple song. The spirits danced faster and laughed louder with each note. The spirits begged Kalunga to keep playing his bow harp. Every time he finished a song, they clapped and cried, another one. Play another song. At first, Kalunga enjoyed being the center of attention. The spirits praised his music and danced with wild joy. He felt like the most important person in the world. But as the night went on, something began to change. Each song made his arms feel heavier. Each note made his breath come shorter. Playing the bow harp was much harder work than he had expected. The spirits, however, seemed to grow stronger and brighter with every song. Their bodies glowed more intensely. Their laughter became louder. Their dancing became more wild and frantic. We love your music, they sang. Play until the sun comes up. Play until tomorrow. Play forever. Kalunga began to feel tired, but he was too proud to admit it. He did not want the spirits to think he was weak. So he kept playing, even though his fingers started to hurt and his back began to ache. The spirits formed a tighter circle around him. They seemed to be feeding on his music, growing stronger while he grew weaker. But Kalunga was too proud to stop playing and too proud to ask for rest. As the hours passed, Kalunga tried to step back from the dancing spirits. He wanted to rest his tired arms and catch his breath. But when he tried to move, he discovered something terrifying. The spirits had closed their circle around him. They stood shoulder to shoulder, blocking every path out of the clearing. Their once friendly smiles now looked sharp and cold. Where are you going, hunter? They asked together, their voices no longer warm and welcoming. You cannot leave us now. Stay and play until the sun rises. Kalunga's heart began to beat fast with real fear for the first time in his life. I need to rest, he said, trying to sound brave. I will play more later. No, the spirits chanted. Play now. Play forever. We command you. Their glowing bodies grew taller and more frightening. Their eyes burned like fire. What had seemed like a friendly celebration was now revealed as a trap. Kalunga looked around desperately for a way to escape, but the spirits surrounded him completely. Above them, the red moon seemed to laugh at his foolishness. Fear crept into his heart like cold water. For the first time, the great hunter realized he might have met something stronger than himself. But it was too late to run away. With each song Kalunga played, he felt his strength flowing out of his body like water from a broken pot. His hands began to tremble. His chest ached with every breath. His voice cracked when he tried to sing along with the music. But the spirits grew stronger and more powerful with every note. They became taller and brighter. Their laughter shook the trees and made the ground vibrate under Kalunga's feet. Now he understood the terrible truth. The spirits were not just enjoying his music, they were feeding on his life force. Every song made them stronger and made him weaker. "Please," Kalunga whispered, his voice barely audible over the spirit's wild celebration. "Let me rest for just a moment." "Never," the spirits roared together. "Play until you have no strength left. Play until your heart stops beating. Your music belongs to us now." Panic filled Kalunga's mind. He had bragged that he could defeat spirits, but now he was their prisoner. His bow felt heavy in his shaking hands. His legs could barely hold him up. The great hunter who had never feared anything was learning what real terror felt like. But even in his fear, his pride made it hard for him to admit he had been wrong. As Kalunga struggled to keep playing, the words of the village elders suddenly echoed in his memory like thunder. "A man may hunt animals, but he must not hunt the unseen world. The spirits are not meant to be conquered. There are powers much older and stronger than any man." The elders had tried to warn him, but he had laughed at their wisdom. He had mocked their concern in front of the whole village. Now their words burned in his mind like fire. Sweat poured down Kalunga's face as he realized how foolish he had been. His pride had led him into a trap that might cost him his life. The spirits danced around him, their eyes glowing like stars. They showed no mercy, no kindness, only hunger for more of his music and his life. Kalunga's hands shook so badly he could barely hold his bow. His vision began to blur from exhaustion. But still the spirits demanded more music, more songs, more of his strength. "I should have listened," he whispered to himself. "The elders were right. I am just a man, and these are powers beyond my understanding." For the first time in his life, the proud hunter felt truly humble. But he feared it might be too late to save himself. Just when Kalunga thought all hope was lost, he saw a familiar small shape at the edge of the clearing. The talking hare had returned. The little animal stood just outside the circle of dancing spirits, where they could not see it. The hare looked directly at Kalunga and spoke in its old man's voice. "Hunter," the hare whispered urgently, "listen carefully. Do not sing their songs. Do not play their music. Sing for life instead." The hare's words cut through Kalunga's despair like a sharp knife. The small animal had come back to help him, even though he had tried to shoot it earlier. "Sing for life," the hare repeated, its eyes bright with wisdom. "Remember who gave you breath. Remember who made the sun and the rivers and the growing things." The spirits were too busy dancing to notice the hare. They were drunk on Kalunga's music and did not see the small creature that had come to save him. Kalunga looked at the hare and felt a tiny spark of hope in his heart. He understood what the animal was trying to tell him. He had been playing the spirits' dark music, feeding their hunger. But there was another kind of song he could sing. The hare nodded once, then disappeared back into the shadows. But its message remained clear in Kalunga's mind. Kalunga took a deep breath and gathered every bit of strength he had left. Instead of playing the wild, dark music the spirits demanded, he began to sing a different song. His voice rose clear and strong, singing praise to the Creator of all things. He sang about the sun that gives light to the world. He sang about the rivers that give water to all living things. He sang about the animals of the forest and the people of the villages. The moment he began this new song, the spirits froze in their dancing. Their glowing faces twisted with rage and fear. "No," they shrieked together. "Not that song. Stop singing that song." But Kalunga continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. He sang about life and growth and all the good things in the world. He sang about love and family and home. The spirits began to flicker like candle flames in the wind. Their bright glow started to fade. Their tall bodies began to shrink. "Stop," they demanded, rushing toward him with their hands outstretched like claws. "You must sing our songs. You belong to us now." But the closer they came to Kalunga's song of life, the weaker they became. Their forms began to dissolve into wisps of smoke and shadow. Kalunga's voice grew louder and more powerful, filled with newfound courage and hope. The spirits howled and screamed like wild storms. They were furious that Kalunga had broken free from their spell. Their beautiful faces became twisted and ugly with rage. "You cannot escape us," they shrieked, rushing at him from all sides. "We will silence your voice forever." They reached out with smoky claws, trying to grab Kalunga's throat and stop his singing. But the more he sang about life and light and goodness, the less power they had over him. His song of praise pushed them back like a strong wind pushing away smoke. Where his voice reached, their darkness could not survive. The spirits' glowing bodies flickered and faded. Their tall forms crumbled into shadows that scattered in all directions. "We will remember you, Hunter," they wailed as they dissolved. "We will wait for you to become proud again." But their threats no longer frightened Kalunga. His song had given him strength and courage he had never known before. This was not the false courage of pride, this was the real courage that comes from humility and respect. The circle of spirits broke apart completely. One by one, they melted away into the night like morning mist before the rising sun. Kalunga kept singing until the last spirit disappeared into the darkness of the forest. As the final spirit dissolved into nothing, the magical clearing began to crumble around Kalunga. The beautiful glow faded away, leaving only ordinary moonlight. The red moon overhead flickered and changed back to its normal silver color. The bent trees straightened themselves and stood still. The ground stopped pulsing and became solid earth again. Everything that had been strange and magical was returning to normal. The backward-flowing river in the distance gurgled and began to flow downhill as rivers should. The owl calls changed from warnings back to ordinary night sounds. Kalunga felt his strength returning as the spirit's dark magic left the forest. The terrible tiredness in his bones began to fade. His hands stopped shaking, and his breath came easier. But the effort of breaking free from the spirit's trap had cost him dearly. As the clearing dissolved completely around him, Kalunga collapsed onto the soft grass. The last thing he saw before exhaustion claimed him was the small hare sitting nearby, watching over him like a guardian. Its kind eyes seemed to say, "Rest now, Hunter. You have learned wisdom." Kalunga closed his eyes and fell into the deepest sleep of his life, there on the forest floor where the magical clearing had once been. When Kalunga opened his eyes, the sun was rising in the east. Golden light streamed through the trees, warm and welcoming. Birds sang their morning songs, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. He found himself lying by the riverbank. The water flowed normally now, clear and cool and moving downhill toward the sea. Fish swam in ordinary patterns, no longer dancing in the air. His bow lay across his chest, silent and still. It was just a regular bow again, not a magical harp. His arrows were back in his quiver, solid wood and metal instead of butterflies. For a moment, Kalunga wondered if the whole night had been a terrible dream. But the deep tiredness in his body and the new wisdom in his heart told him it had all been real. He sat up slowly and looked around. The forest looked peaceful now, friendly and familiar. Squirrels chattered in the trees, and rabbits hopped through the underbrush. Everything was as it should be. But Kalunga himself was different. The pride that had burned so hot in his chest was gone. In its place was something better, humility, respect, and gratitude for being alive. He stood up carefully, still weak from his ordeal, and began the long walk home to his village. Kalunga walked slowly through the forest toward his village. Every step reminded him of the lesson he had learned. His body was still tired, but his spirit felt lighter than it had in years. The forest seemed calmer now, more peaceful. Animals that used to run from the great hunter now watched him curiously from the bushes. A deer stepped onto the path ahead of him, looked at him for a long moment, then walked away without fear. Birds called to each other overhead, but now their voices sounded like songs of welcome instead of warnings. The trees swayed gently in the morning breeze, no longer whispering his name or bowing down to him. With each step toward home, Kalunga felt smaller and smaller, but in a good way. He was no longer the proud hunter who thought he was greater than everyone else. He was just a man, walking home through a forest that was much older and wiser than he was. The sun climbed higher in the sky, warming his back and lighting his way. For the first time in years, Kalunga felt grateful just to be alive, just to be walking in the fresh morning air. He thought about his village and the people waiting there. He wondered what he would tell them about his night in the forest. He knew his life would never be the same. When Kalunga finally reached his village, people came running from all directions to greet him. They had been worried when they found his hut empty in the morning. The children ran up first, their eyes bright with excitement. They expected to hear another story about his great bravery and strength. "Kalunga," they called out. "Where have you been? Did you really meet the spirits? Did you defeat them like you said you would?" The adults gathered around too, curious to hear what had happened. Some looked worried, others looked eager for news. The village elders stood at the back of the crowd, watching quietly with wise, patient eyes. Everyone wanted to hear the great hunter's story. They expected him to boast about his victory over the spirits of the forest. They thought he would parade around the village, showing off like he always did. But Kalunga stood quietly in the center of the crowd, looking at all their expectant faces. The words they wanted to hear stuck in his throat. He could not boast anymore. The night had changed him completely. He took a deep breath and prepared to tell them the truth, not the truth they expected to hear, but the truth that needed to be told. Kalunga looked at all the faces surrounding him, the eager children, the curious adults, the watching elders. His voice was quiet but clear when he finally spoke. "My friends," he began, "I was wrong. I said that even spirits would fear me, but I was foolish and proud. Last night, I learned that a hunter may kill an antelope, but he cannot kill the spirits." The crowd grew very quiet. This was not what they had expected to hear from the great hunter. Kalunga continued, "I followed strange music into the forest. I found spirits there who trapped me with their magic. They made me play music until I nearly died. I was saved only because I remembered to sing for life instead of singing for darkness." He looked directly at the elders as he spoke. "The old ones tried to warn me, but I laughed at their wisdom. I was too proud to listen. I could have died because of my foolish words." The children stared at him in shock. The adults whispered among themselves. But the elders nodded slowly, understanding in their eyes. "To boast about conquering spirits is to invite terrible danger," Kalunga said. "I will never speak such words again. The forest has taught me that some powers are not meant to be challenged." From that day forward, Kalunga was a changed man. He never bragged about his hunting skills again. He never claimed to be greater than anyone or anything else. Instead, he became a teacher for the young people of the village. When children wanted to learn to hunt, he showed them how to respect the forest and all its creatures, both seen and unseen. "Take only what you need," he would tell them. "Thank the animal for giving its life to feed your family. Remember that you are just one small part of a much larger world." Kalunga's story spread from village to village like seeds on the wind. Other hunters heard the tale and learned from his mistake. Parents told it to their children as a warning about the dangers of too much pride. Years passed, and children grew up repeating Kalunga's hard-learned lesson: a hunter may kill animals for food, but he cannot kill the spirits of the forest. Kalunga lived a long life, no longer known as the proudest hunter in the land, but as the wisest. He had learned that true strength comes not from defeating others, but from knowing your place in the world. And sometimes, on quiet nights, people said they could see a small hare sitting by his door, the same hare that had saved his life and taught him the most important lesson of all. The story you have just heard is a beautiful African tale I learned long ago. I'm telling it to you to wake your minds to the dangers of pride and the importance of respecting what we cannot see or understand. If you were Kalunga, would you have listened to the elders' warnings from the beginning? Or would you have made the same proud mistakes he did? I want to know your thoughts because every story is like a candle that can light the path for someone else. Remember, true strength comes from humility, not from boasting. The wisest people are often those who know how much they don't know. God bless you, and may wisdom guide your steps. Meanwhile, on the final screen, I am leaving you with one of the channel's most beloved folktales. I am sure you'll love it. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.